Welcome back to Lost Legacies. I'm Matt.
And I'm Sam.
Well, Sam, they say that smell is your most powerful scent.
Okay.
Sense. Smell is the most powerful scent
It
compared
is
to
the
your
most
other
powerful
senses.
scent, yeah.
They say it's the most powerful sense. A smell could take you back in time, remember someone, vividly remember someone, who you haven't seen in forever. And yesterday, I had one of those moments.
Oh.
I was closing up at work and I was taking out the trash. And listeners, our warehouse, it's a distance from the garbage, the dumpster. So it's not that, it's not that far, but it's far enough. So I know that what I smelled was not the dumpster. Also,
Okay.
we're like kind of like offices and warehouses, so the dumpsters are really filled with like paper and cardboard mostly.
Yeah.
So they don't really smell. So I'm walking back. I get back to the warehouse, closing the door, and I smell the smell of an old friend. My heart skips a beat, and I have one small tear drop from my eye. It smelled like Blockbuster Video. I completely forgot what that smell was until I smelt it and I was closing the door, and I'm just like, oh, as the giant door nearly cuts me in two, I was like, oh, wow. Blockbuster. It was such a distinct smell.
Now, what, pray tell, does to you Blockbuster smell like?
I don't know. I think it was like that hard plastic VHS covers that you had to pop open. It's kind of like that. Like, yeah, manufactured plastic, which makes sense in our area, in our neighborhood, because it's all manufactured plastic.
Yeah. Wow, interesting.
Yeah. Yep, that's it. That's all I got for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what else has happened? Oh, I guess we didn't really talk about this last time, and I know this because we just talked about it today at work. To catch everyone up, I did watch Ant-Man. What's it called? Quantumania. I liked it. I don't see what the big deal was.
Yeah.
Sure, the CG wasn't. It had some weak moments, but I mean that whole movie was CG, so I could kind of let it go. It felt like watching a cartoon.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I liked it. It was fun. I do have a problem with Kang the Conqueror, because this is the second time we've seen him, and like, I don't know, he was supposed to be this huge big bad, and he kind of just, spoiler alert, I'll just say they defeat him. That's all I'll say. It's a Marvel movie, they're gonna win.
I mean, they didn't win in Infinity War, but
well, that's true too. But this isn't an Avengers movie, it was an Ant-Man movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was weird. I see what you said, how this would have been better as a Fantastic Four movie. I agree 100%. It was a weird one, but it was fun. And I don't understand why everyone was hating on it. I think I definitely enjoyed it a lot more than Thor, Love and Thunder, and Multiverse of Madness. So
okay.
What other ones were in Phase 4?
There were a bunch in Phase 4.
There's a bunch, but I'm like Spidey. It wasn't better than No Way Home, but I like No Way Home. I like Wakanda. I like this one, Quantumania. So I don't know. I feel kind of even. I feel like sure there was a lot of low points. I don't know about low points for MCU this phase. I'll say mid. There's a lot of mid points, but I think it was balanced by some really cool high points as well.
Yeah.
It's just really weird because it felt like story-wise there wasn't a lot. Like, we got so much content, but there wasn't like an overarching story. It was just all the seeds that they're planting.
Yeah. It's sort of like phase 4 is very much like reevaluating where everything is
Right.
after Endgame, but not to the point where it's like, oh, we're explaining, like, well, what happened during the snap, and like what
Yeah.
happened in those 5 years and all that stuff, like, because we've given our thoughts, about
Mm-hmm.
like Falcon and the Winter Soldier and all that. But yeah, like this feels a little bit more like where this is the testing ground. We're laying everything out and we're gonna see what's kicking off, what like where everything is at.
Yeah.
And now that we have our villain, for this phase, I think now they're going to be more in this next phase. There's going to be more
Bigger
of a
lead
lead
up
up
or
to,
what?
yeah.
Okay, when does Phase 5 start? What's the first movie?
uh I don't know.
So it hasn't started yet.
I I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question because I haven't seen Guardians 3 and I wasn't sure what phase that was. Not that it really matters, but
I think it's phase 4.
that was probably the last Phase 4, right?
Well, see, I don't know
Oh, that's,
because
we also
you
had
know
Secret Invasion.
yeah, we've
I
got
didn't watch it, but
there was Secret Invasion. We've
huh.
also got the Marvels coming out in November. um Yeah, I don't know where Phase 4 ends. It might be with the Marvels.
Oh, Ant-Man was the first film in Phase 5.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
oh, huh. So then,
Interesting.
what was the last Phase 4 project?
So the last of Phase 4
Is that
was Wakanda
Wakanda
Forever.
Forever?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, hey, solid.
Yeah.
So where? So is Guardians Phase 5?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. Oh, I watched Guardians.
Oh, yeah. You like it?
Yeah, yeah, I loved it. Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. Um, it feels I was worried, after having Guardians in, some adventures.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, they were gonna be, a little bit okay, back to basics, or something. I was afraid they were gonna have like lost a step somewhere in there. Nope. No, they haven't. It's great. It's wonderful. I cried. Um,
Nice.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if it's the best one, but I
Hmm.
definitely feel, which is an interesting thing, because I know a lot of people don't like Volume 2,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Volume 2 is one of the best MCU movies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm already on the outs here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if it's on that level, but it is incredibly solid. It's great. And it was cool to see it's just cool to see the Guardians back.
Yeah. Well, I was in that camp. I wasn't a big fan of the second one until I watched it again,
Mm,
like I don't know, a year or two later, and
mm,
I enjoyed it much more the second time around.
mm.
So yeah. Okay, so it says right here, Series 4 TV was WandaVision through She-Hulk.
Ooh,
So
okay.
Secret Invasion is the first TV project of Phase 5.
Okay.
Well, everyone, I hope you're not listening to this episode without having listened to last week's, because this is a two-parter. We're jumping into part 2 of Matt and Sam's greatest films of all time list. I was trying to come up with a cool title on the spot, couldn't think of one. So, yeah,
greatest films of what Matt and Sam think are the greatest.
exactly.
Yeah,
I will say this before we get
that's hard.
started, because last time we did, we each made a top 10 list, and
Mm-hmm.
we talked about films 10 through 6. So we're going to do the top 5 this time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did leave off some crucial information though
Okay.
regarding honorable mentions, because I think I mentioned Starship Troopers and Batman: Mask of the Phantasm. There were
Mm-hmm.
several others that I kicked off just within the last couple of months because I was kind of moving things around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the main ones being The Prestige.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I think that
Okay.
easily Christopher Nolan's best film.
Mm-hmm.
And I will fight anyone to the death to defend that honor. Um,
Wow.
but will I really fight you, or will it be an illusion? Welcome to the
Wow.
Prestige.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so that one, and then and this is the one that I'm still like going back and forth because I do want it on my top 10 list, but I don't know what to kick off. That is The Fountain.
Ah. Okay, okay.
Easily what I feel like is Darren Aronofsky's best film.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's one of those filmmakers who really out there. It could be really weird.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I could even be a little pretentious,
Mm-hmm.
especially later. You know, as I've grown as as a student of film, of cinema, and
Oh my
going to film
God.
school. Because trust me, man, you want to talk about you want to go to film school and talk to people about their favorite movies. They're gonna talk about Rec Room for a Dream.
Yeah.
It's one of like the same ones that always get brought up, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was a good movie. No, I don't ever want to watch it again. Um, but yeah, it's just like, no, I don't want to talk about it. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I feel like The Fountain is something. There's just so much um, more, man. Like I don't even know how to explain it. You know, my roommate did a stage play of it in college.
Wow.
Phenomenal. Yeah. Oh yeah. So like the quote unquote director's cut, they made into a graphic novel, and that's what she adapted.
Oh. Okay,
Yeah, like
okay.
it's so well. She kind of just took like one piece of it, I think, if I remember it correctly. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Oh man, I loved it. The Fountain.
Wow.
The
I never
only
knew
I
that.
think that's and funny enough, both The Prestige and The Fountain are the only two films in existence that I watched back to back on my first viewing. I
Mm.
watched The Prestige. I immediately started over and watched it again because I'm
Wow.
like, what the hell was that?
Wow.
And the same thing with The Fountain. As soon as it ended, I watched it again. I was like, what the hell just happened? So, though, yeah, those are the two. Out of the two, I really want The Fountain though on my top 10 somewhere,
Mm.
some point. So,
At some point.
yeah,
Maybe we'll do like a 9A.
right.
9A, 9B, we'll tear it off that way. This is 9.5,
See, because my number 10 was Amadeus, and I don't want to kick Amadeus off.
You can't kick Amadeus off, You just can't do it. We're not gonna go changing our list now, okay? It's
Yeah,
too
I
late.
know.
It's out there.
We're gonna
We'll
have
re-
to. We'll have to
we'll
update it
revisit
in
this in
another
a
100
couple of years.
episodes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go. 100
All right.
episodes later, we'll do this again.
Yeah. Okay. So you started last time. I'll start this time.
Okay. Well, hang on. What if I want to talk about some of my honorable mentions?
Oh, you have more? Go for it.
Well, a little bit. There's one I want to talk about, but I'll just specify there are several movies that I feel like are Sam movies that I grew up with that I remember watching all the time as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And those were Back to the Future, first
Mm-hmm.
one. Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Nice.
Uh um
Best villain.
yeah. King Kong versus Godzilla.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
the original. Yeah.
The original one, because this new one is Godzilla versus Kong.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I did enjoy, but
That's how I remember. I really enjoyed that one. Um, and then Grease,
mm-hmm.
and the movie that is my honorable mention, My Best Friend's Wedding.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
that's a
such
good
a
one.
I was such a weird child. I don't know if this is my fault though, because these were just the movies that were on, and whenever visiting people's houses, and I happened to like it, so whenever I would go to that person's house again, I'd request that I watch My Best Friend's Wedding. Probably not the best movie, to let a 5 or 6 year old watch. But you know what? Yeah, it's great. One, you got Hans Zimmer doing the score. already
Hmm.
at such a ripe age, at a ripe age of 6 or 7, being introduced to Hans Zimmer. So fantastic. Yeah, you got Julia Robert, Dermot Mulroney, Cameron Diaz. Yeah, it's a fantastic movie. It's a wonderful movie. You're rooting for Julia Roberts to fail, and that's a very hard thing to do.
Hmm.
And she doesn't make it easy,
Hmm.
but she does make it enjoyable. She makes it entertaining. It's entertaining as hell.
Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic movie. Yeah.
I think that one's up there. It's not on my top 10, but like I do have a list of like my 5-star movies, what I think is a perfect film.
Mm, mm.
Um, that would be on there as well as While You Were Sleeping,
Oh,
which we have
oh,
talked about that on the
oh.
podcast before.
Yeah.
Sandra Bullock, Bill Pullman.
Uh-huh.
So, and again, like there's just something. It's like what we were saying the other day or last week. I don't remember, but we were talking about the pacing of film, how
Mm-hmm.
the writing of action films and horror films is very similar to each other, and it's also very similar to comedies because you have
Mm-hmm.
to keep a certain pacing. I think While You Were Sleeping is like almost perfect. If you
Mm-hmm.
break the, if you, I want to read the screenplay because there's no like wasted scene, there's no wasted line of dialogue. Like it's so damn funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's a perfect movie.
It's a perfect movie.
And honestly, I think the only like movie I gave 5 stars to on this list. Oh, I'm looking at my letterbox. Actually, I'll retract that because I haven't reviewed a lot of those films because I've already seen it.
Sure, sure.
But oh yeah, okay, never mind. Like Point Break, RRR, they're on that list. And now I'm looking at my top 5 and
Mm-hmm.
even my top 10. I'm like, yeah, I think I would give them all 5 stars.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, I think honestly, yeah, I haven't there are quite a few of them that I haven't reviewed just because I haven't gotten around to watching them again.
Hmm.
Um but yeah, I think yeah, every movie on this list is 5 stars.
Nice. All right, let's kick this off.
Go for it.
Jumping back in, my number 5 top movie of all time, the classic, The Muppet Movie.
Okay.
Not. What was the one a couple years ago? It was just called The Muppets, right?
Yeah, The Muppets.
Okay, no, The Muppet Movie.
Mm-hmm. 1979.
Talk about cinema. The Muppets at their best.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't like, how do you make this movie? Like, what was, I want to know, like, the conception of it from the idea to writing it down in the script. Like, it's so wild.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it seems simple, like, oh, yeah, we're going to write a movie about how the Muppets got famous. But then it becomes this crazy road trip film, which is like, and they're building the team as they go. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
so crazy. Like I don't know.
To date, that I think there's 3 movies that do celebrity cameos perfectly. One is the Muppet movie,
Hmm.
2 is the Blues Brothers,
Yes,
and 3 is the Rocky and Bullwinkle movie.
dude. Yes. Oh my god. I'm glad you
100%.
brought that up.
Yeah, those 3 movies are a masterclass in how you
Hmm.
do celebrity cameos.
Hmm.
Because you give them a role where they're not taking away from the stars, but they're just prominent enough where you're like, oh heck yeah, they get a memorable scene or they get a
Yeah.
memorable line of dialogue. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And like the other Muppet movies, there's some good ones. There's some not so good ones. The first one just had this magic to it. But the other ones still did have some really good cameos. I think the criminally underrated one was the last one. Uh,
Muppets Most Wanted.
Muppets Most Wanted.
Hmm.
Like critically, it didn't do as well as the one before with Jason Segel and Amy Adams, right?
Yeah.
It didn't do as well as that. It didn't make as much money as that, but I think it's a far superior film. It's just fun. I mean, you have Kermit trying to survive in a Russian gulag, with Danny Trejo as
Uh-huh.
himself.
Uh-huh.
Like, oh, and Ray Liotta, R.I.P.
Ray
You
Liotta.
know,
Yeah.
Like, dude, like it was such a fun ride. And then you have an evil Kermit. I loved it.
Yeah.
Evil French Kermit. So yeah. But number 5 on my list was the Muppet movie. Oh, and also gotta say, that was the creation of one of the greatest songs of all time, The Rainbow Connection.
Rainbow Connection. Yeah.
Listeners, when my brother got married and they had the son and mother dance
Uh-huh.
and they started playing The Rainbow Connection, oh my god, there wasn't a dry eye in the house.
Yep.
Ugh.
Yep.
So damn emotional. Get
I
married
love you,
again,
Mom.
Sam. Get married again. Just so
No,
we can
you get
relive
married.
that.
How about that? You
Oh
get
crap.
married and then you can
Yeah,
do
but
that
now
with
I feel
Mom.
like I'd be stealing it. Also,
Nah,
that was really your song when you were young because you would always sing it and stuff. I love
that's
the
true.
movie, I love the song, but I was never really one to sing it.
That's true. I would sing a lot, and whenever like having a bad dream or something, and I would, wake up Mom. That
Yeah.
was usually the song she would sing, to like put me at
Yeah.
ease.
Now, another song that you would, or music you would sing, if you already mentioned it, was Grease.
It's true.
You didn't dance to any Grease at your wedding. What gives? There's no
Hey,
Grease lightning.
you know, you know, it's you know, it's again, it's the thing. I don't think maybe 6 or 7 year olds should be watching Grease. Although I didn't know, it wasn't until I was older, and listening to the lyrics that I was
You're
like,
like,
hey,
hey,
hey, wait a
I
second.
think they're singing about sex.
I know that word. That's not a word I'm supposed to say. Um, should I be listening to this? And everyone's like, no, it's fine. I love Grease. Mom and the ants, they're all like, oh, it's such a great movie. I'm like, yeah, it is. And I watched it way too young.
Oh man,
Oh
that's
man.
that's Sam's growing up right there. That was his
Uh-huh.
development.
Uh-huh.
How'd you learn about sex? I watched Grease.
Watch Grease and Grease
Wow.
too, but
Oh yeah,
yeah, yeah.
man. All
Uh
right, so at my wedding, we're gonna dance to Grease Lightning.
Grease like
Hmm.
hey, I'll learn it. I'll learn the steps. I'll dress for the occasion, all right? I'll do
Sandy,
it.
please don't make me laugh.
Wow. All
All
right.
right, save us from this.
Cool. I don't have a good segue for this. So, uh number 5, uh it's The Shape of Water.
Oh, all right.
I've done a lot
Speaking
of
of sex,
speaking of sex. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Um speaking of grease lightning, all
Hmm.
right. All right, look. Let me wax poetic for a second. Uh I did a lot of introspection. Guillermo del Toro is my favorite filmmaker of all time, my favorite director, my favorite writer. When it comes to film, I think his worlds are incredibly crafted. They're whole unto themselves. There were so many that I could have chosen. Uh, and I think like anybody would be like, oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I say like Pan's Labyrinth, people will be like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Pacific Rim, I think a lot of people would be like, that's a bold choice, but I see it, I get it. Um, no, it has to be Shape of Water.
Mm.
Um, and let me just say, uh, a lot of people to this day write it off as just the fish fucking movie.
Hmm.
And that's it. That's their letterbox review. That's the whatever. That's all they say. It's all they want to talk about when people say like, "Hey, what's your favorite Guillermo del Toro movie?" Like, "Oh, Shape of Water." Like, um,
Hmm.
it's so much more than that, and even that aspect of it is more beautiful than what we're just boiling it down to.
Hmm.
We're boiling it down to the buzzwords that are gonna make people gasp and be taken aback, and all this stuff. It is a, if I'm remembering the art book for it, the subtitle is a cautionary fairy tale for modern times.
Mm.
And yeah, it's exactly that. It is about people who are marginalized finding their way in the world when they are not the ones who have full control over the things that they do in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
The risks that have to be taken to do something as simple as falling in love. uh and even falling in love with somebody who's completely different from you, that complicated, messy, no less beautiful. It is as much a love letter to cinema as it is a love letter to the immigrant experience, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie. I think Del Toro utilizes, like sort of like the set pieces that he's, known for, and the creatures that he's known for, and I think he boils all that down into these simple, quote unquote simple but no less intricate looking designs that are, they're just, yeah, they're incredible. There's a reason why it won Best Picture. um and the sex is only a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more than that, and it's just,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful movie, and I think it's the one that speaks to me the most.
Yeah. And that's one of my favorite romance tropes. Opposites attract.
Opposites attract. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
there you go.
One day, Sam, one day I'll find my opposite or my enemy, because that's my other one, enemies to lovers.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we just got to find the one person you hate, and then I'll clock it first and be like, oh, I see where this is going. Give it 5 years.
Yeah, that's a strong, hate's such a strong emotion. We'll see. Um, yeah. Okay, so what's my fourth one? Hmm. This was one that's already been taken.
Ooh.
Number 4, Danny Boyle's Sunshine. Oh man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Vindication.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Such a good one. We're not going to go too far into it because we talked about it pretty good
Yeah.
last episode.
Yeah, we
But
did.
yeah, man, everything from the music, especially the music. Oh man, I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to kind of like the things we didn't talk about last time. That's one of those films where like why if you're a fan of cinema, watch the commentary,
Mm-hmm.
because it's
Mm-hmm.
so good just hearing Danny Boyle talk about the story and stuff, and how the film, it is a group of astronauts on essentially what is a suicide mission. They just don't know it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts off as an ensemble piece. And the way it really is Cillian Murphy's film, he's the lead.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really cool the way they use his character Kappa throughout the film, especially the beginning when it is an ensemble piece, the way they kind of shoot everything, the way they film it. And there's this big scene in the beginning where they're all astronauts, so they're all scientists and engineers, and they have to make this big decision. And I like it because they say, okay, why don't we vote on it? And they're like, no, we're the smartest people alive,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to talk about this and we're going to figure it out and we're going to make a decision. And that's so cool. I love that. And the fact that a whole scene, Kappa is just sitting off to the side. He doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have a single line of dialogue through that whole scene until the very end, when they realize the entire mission, the entire fate of humanity, it comes down to one decision, and the one person qualified to make it is him. And he's just like, shit.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
love it, and it's brilliant. And Danny Boyle, say, is purposely written like that. Is purposely shot that way
Mm-hmm.
because you're not supposed to know he's our lead yet. He's gonna be the last man standing. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I was like, yeah, man, so beautiful. And then uh, the challenges they put him through in the script and the way they film it. You really have to watch the film to understand like the challenges Danny Boyle put Cillian Murphy through, because he's like, the audience needs to Kappa needs to earn the leading man status in the
Mm-hmm.
audience's eyes. He's gonna be the savior of humanity, hopefully, you know. So he
Yeah.
has to earn
Yeah.
it. So it's just really cool. And again, I still think that's one of Chris Evans' best performances.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, and it's just a damn good movie. I love the sets. I love the mystery, the intrigue.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if you watch it a second time, you see a lot more of the clues of Danny Boyle setting up the third act. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, love it. I even love the. A lot of people hate the song at the end. A lot of people.
What?
And I was like, I really like it because it is like, it's a triumph. You know,
Yeah.
sure, they gave their lives, but it's a triumph. Like, you know, I guess that's a spoiler. But
Whoops.
yeah, like it's supposed to be jarring, you know? That ending
Yeah.
is like, oh, okay, cool. So I don't know. I personally I really like it. I thought that was a cool ending.
I did too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I did too. People just don't get it, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh,
Now,
and I,
now that it's going through, some sort of a reprisal,
yeah.
I think more people are into it.
And I don't think we mentioned this last week when we were talking about it, but it's a Alex Garland script.
Yes.
And he has gone
Yes.
on and done. He's directing his own stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
So he did Ex Machina. He did Annihilation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I feel like he's doing something else. Or
The recent movie Men.
oh yeah, he did
He
Man.
did the TV series Devs,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
supposedly rumor has it that he secretly sort of directed Dread.
Oh, that's right, because he did the script, right?
He did the
And
script for it.
yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
heard that. Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rumor,
There's
rumor has it. Anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Heard it through the grapevine.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And he, of course, did one of my former favorite films of all time, The Beach,
Oh,
starring
that's right.
Leonardo DiCaprio. I still think it's an amazing
Hmm.
film. Maybe in my top 20, but certainly not the top 10 anymore.
Hmm.
Um, but I still think it's a great film if you haven't checked it out. But
Yeah.
Alex Garland is such a unique guy, and it was based off his book. He wrote the book first before he even got anywhere near screenwriting.
Hmm.
So they adapted the novel The Beach to the movie, also for Danny Boyle. That book is one of my favorite novels. It's far superior to the movie, of course.
Hmm.
Um, but they also did a movie. I guess it's technically like a movie novelization of Sunshine, but
Mm.
it's really like, I don't know. I think he wrote the screenplay first, and then he wrote the novel, which is
Ooh.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And it also has like a more like, there's more deleted scenes and all that stuff. So it's kind of cool, but you cannot find this book anywhere.
Oh man.
Like, I've been
Don't tell
trying.
me
I was
that.
like, damn it. So if you can find the novelization of Sunshine by Alex Garland, buy it and send it to me. Let me know.
Please. Or just point us in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Number 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about magic and the magic of cinema, magic of movies, magic of stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think one avenue that we haven't really ventured in our top 10, unless I'm overlooking something. Nope, not in mine. Is animation.
Oh.
And some of the best movies I think ever made are animated movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think even today, I think when we really look back on it, I think something like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I think we're going to throw it up there when we talk about film classics. We're going to throw it up there with Citizen Kane, Casablanca,
Mm-hmm.
Gone
Five
with the Wind,
stars. I
all of
just
it.
saw it on my
5
list.
stars. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Easily. When the
Mm-hmm.
second I walked out of that movie, I was like, this is one of the best movies ever made,
Mm-hmm.
hands down. Kiki's Delivery Service is also one of the best movies ever made,
Mm-hmm.
hands down.
Mm-hmm.
This was a little bit after our time, when Studio Ghibli really had like it's not like its heyday, but
Mm-hmm.
had its introduction to America. Because of that time, it was through like a small like Disney subsidiary, and Weinstein company was bringing in
Mm-hmm.
lots of movies, and the Studio Ghibli movies were, yeah, they were some of these movies. I remember watching commercials for them on the Disney VHSs that we had, and I was like, those look interesting, but it's also, I don't know how I'll get those, like that's kind of weird. Like they look different than the animated movies I'm used to.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't come to any of these movies, any of Hayao Miyazaki's movies, until I was an adult. And I am jealous of everybody who got to grow up with these movies,
Mm-hmm.
because these are some fantastic movies. And of the ones that I've seen, to still, Kiki's Delivery Service is my favorite. Um, it's it's a typical coming of age story. You have a young girl who thinks she knows it all, goes off to a brand new city trying to find her way in the world, and she does, but it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the movie. It's life. It doesn't matter that Kiki is a witch. It doesn't matter that she
Mm-hmm.
can fly and she can talk to her cat. uh she still has to work. She still has to find a way to live, and she has to find a way to live in a city she's never been in. you know and it's a classic tale of, you know realizing how much growth you have to do just just to live, you know
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's a wonderfully animated movie. It's so beautiful, it's so fluid. I have to stop myself from saying this from like every Miyazaki movie I watch, but literally every frame is a painting. You take
Mm-hmm.
any shot from this movie and you could put it up in a plaque, put it in your house, put it in your office, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's that beautiful. Um yeah, and it was very interesting watching this at the height of the pandemic, at the height of the initial lockdown, and I believe at the time uh I was still recovering from my surgery from when I
Mm-hmm.
tore my ACL. So I didn't have anything to do but watch movies. And watching that was just like, man, especially like in those days where it was just bad news after bad news after bad news. And then watching this movie that is also about somebody who is struggling through a difficult time in their life, and ultimately coming out on the other side, changed, but still coming out of it. And it just became one of those movies that's like, yeah, this is, yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. And I will say, I know I mentioned this will be my last point before we move on. I know I mentioned this, I want to say 2 episodes ago now, when we were talking about Miyazaki movies, and how a lot of people seem to just throw them into this banner of like comfy and cozy, and
Oh,
like,
right. Yeah.
oh, like there's no plot, it's all vibes, blah blah blah. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, there is a plot, and it's not just vibes. The vibes are enhanced because of everything that's going on, and it's not always comfortable. It can be terrifying, and it's okay to embrace that. It is okay to accept that movies like My Neighbor Totoro and Howl's Moving Castle and Kiki's Delivery Service have things that are genuinely scary, and not just scary
Mm-hmm.
monsters, but situations and feelings. And it's okay to have those within your comfortable little things. Everybody's trying to make RPGs based off of, like just the vibes of, like comfort stuff. It's like that's
Mm-hmm.
fine and that's okay. And more power to you. But I think it's a little bit reductive when you just label all of these movies as something comfortable
Mm-hmm.
because they're not always that, and it's okay that they're not always that.
Mm-hmm. There was like,
That's
I felt like for the longest time, probably about 10, 15 years ago, there was like this trend we were getting from like indie video games, whether it was for like mobile or whatever. But it's kind of the same thing. It was kind of thrown into this like cozy gaming type of genre.
mhm,
Like you're playing these stories or whatever. There's not a lot of stake or just. I think what it was kind of like what you're saying, like the vibes. It was all cozy, and
mhm,
a lot of these games really got popular, but some of the biggest ones were like really dark. Like
mhm,
I don't even remember some of the names, but I remember one that really stood out for me. I even think it was like black and white, maybe. But essentially, I want to say it's like it's this couple, married couple, and they lost a child. Um, to something I don't remember what, some kind of illness, and the game is like the parents processing their grief. So you're kind of going through
mm,
this like little kind of weird adventure, and you really don't know what's going on. And it's kind of one of those things where like, oh, there's no plot, it's just vibes. But as you go on, you start to get the backstory, and you figure out what's going on, and why does this relationship need to be repaired, and all this stuff. And
mhm,
like, uh, especially at the time, it wasn't really my thing, but now I'm like, wow, I really want to try and find that game. And like, that was just one example. There's so many of those.
mhm,
And you know what's a good one? I wouldn't call it cozy, but probably my favorite video game of all time, Life is Strange.
mm.
If you kind of
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like sit in for a second, you would get that cozy vibe. It's this very like Portland-esque, chill beachside vibes of a game, and it has really good indie music,
Mhm,
and all the main characters are these quirky high school girls. It's a very, it feels like a cozy game. But
yeah.
as you play, no, you realize, oh god, this is like I'm in the middle of Twin Peaks. Uh, there's death everywhere. There's
Mhm,
time travel mechanics, and it's kind of the same thing. So it's really interesting, and like I know people are gonna fall over when I say this, but I've never seen a Miyazaki movie, so I can't really compare, but I can see like the correlation between everything you're just saying about his films and when they got popular, and how that had like inadvertently had an effect on like the indie gaming world.
yeah,
So because
yeah.
now I feel like it's more of what you were saying, like it's kind of just the vibes.
Mhm,
It's and I think it's just because it's harder and harder for indie games and indie companies to survive right now. It is unfortunately about making like the quick buck,
yeah.
and just going for the vibes instead of like the deep tissue, you know.
Mhm.
So, man, that's interesting though. But all right, I'm gonna put Kiki on my watch list. That might be my first one I go down,
Ooh.
and then Totoro because I just like the design. I
Oh,
I just want to hug him.
okay, okay, okay. Start with Totoro. That was
Okay.
yeah, that was I don't think that was the first one that I watched, but yeah, I think that's going to be a great intro for
Am I
you.
gonna fall down the rabbit hole? And am I gonna get like Miyazaki
Yeah.
tattoos?
Yeah, you're going to want to. Yeah.
I'm gonna get a tattoo of Totoro's face over my face.
There you go. Yeah.
There we
That's
go.
exactly that's exactly what's going to
Yeah,
happen. Yeah.
man. Well, if you remember last week, I was ranking all these films on the spot because I had them alphabetical. Uh,
Yeah.
The top five, it kind of got mixed because I don't really know what they are. I know what my number one is.
Okay.
So this is kind of weird because like I don't I this is the number three choice, but I actually think I would prefer Sunshine over this one.
Mm.
So this this the top five it's loose. It's a loose five.
I did throw a curveball at you, and I do feel bad about that. So I do want to apologize
Good. And
again.
you should. Apology not accepted. Anyway,
Wow.
no. I'll accept your apology because I'm about to piss you off with this next one.
Uh-oh.
My number three favorite film of all time, 500 Days of Summer.
Okay.
Okay, not the reaction I was expecting from you, but we
Wait,
have had
you
words.
son of a, how
We have
dare
had
you?
words over this movie, but I think that's part of the charm. Like
Mhm.
there's so many different takes on this film. First off, 500 Days of Summer came out when I was in high school. The Matt that watched that movie,
No,
right?
it didn't. It
No.
came out when I was in high school.
Oh, I'm
You
gonna look
were in
this.
college by then.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I'm gonna look it up right now. Hang on.
This might not make the edit, but it's because I remember I went to school the next day.
Oh, yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Big time.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
2009.
Yeah, exactly. I remember because I went to school the next day and I talked about I talked with it to my friends, and one of them was just like, I didn't like summer.
Typical high school response.
Uh-huh.
Was this a
Exactly.
girl or a guy?
It was a girl.
Yeah, this
Hmm.
is interesting because especially when that movie came out, the character Summer and Zoe Deschanel, who plays Summer, was getting a lot of hate.
Hmm.
And a lot of it was from young teenage girls.
Hmm.
But I think that's kind of the whole point. Like when you're that age, you have a whole your views and ideas of what's romantic and what love is so what's the word, like skewed,
Hmm. It's
you
very
know.
skewed.
It's
Yeah.
like it's like you're looking at this grand concept, this idea through like a stained glass, like you just it's there, it's just distorted. And I that was Tom's character, Tom's the main character, that was his problem. What does the
Hmm.
narrator say? He's like his views on love were based off of
Sad British pop music and a total misreading of the ending of the movie The Graduate.
oh, exactly,
Yeah.
he's one of those guys who thought the ending of The Graduate was a happy ending,
Yeah.
you know. And it's not it's a really sad ending. And and again, it's all in the acting. It's just
Hmm.
like the last 2 seconds and you just watch the actors, you know, and you're like, oh crap, what did we just do? It's that
Hmm.
kind of moment.
Hmm.
um but I like how they did spoof it in Wayne's World. Was that
Yeah.
part two? I don't remember, one or two.
I think it was the second one.
Yeah. But so you have to look at, there's two things I want to talk about with this film. One is the actual story itself, the script itself.
Hmm.
It is a romantic comedy, but like for guys, that's kind of the best way to describe it, you know,
Mm.
because it is from Tom's perspective, and you do see all his guy friends, their perspectives. Um, but it really is about this young man who hasn't grown up yet, and he doesn't really have that experience with like good healthy relationships or love, and that's why he's making these very youthful mistakes.
Hmm.
And he's very in a he is selfish, you know. And now whether Summer is going through the same stuff, she probably is, but from the point of the film, it's really from Tom's perspective. And like if you're on Tom's side, you really kind of got to reevaluate things.
Yeah.
If you're on Tom's side, you're probably a teenager,
Yeah,
you
for
know.
sure.
um
For sure.
because that's the thing, like everything Summer tells him, you know, is true. She's like, I told you I didn't want to be in a relationship.
Hmm.
uh you know, even though these are the things we're doing, this and this, which seems like we're in a relationship, like she was honest about her feelings from the beginning. And it's like, oh man. um so me watching that through the ages, 2009, so what, I was 23, no, 20. I was
Wow.
20 years old when that movie came out.
Wow.
2021. Um,
Were we
so
ever that young?
I know. Yeah. Before my knees were injured, before I felt pain. But yeah, so seeing that movie throughout the years, very much like The Beach, your perspective changes as you get older, and you're like,
Mhm.
oh, I see. And again, that's a movie where you really should watch the director's commentary because it's
Yeah.
the director, I believe, two screenwriters, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who plays Tom.
Mm. Hmm.
And it's so fascinating how all four of these men made this movie, this one singular movie, but they each had their own different perspectives on
Mm.
it and on Tom. And I thought that was so cool. Um, and I won't get into it because you really need to see it for yourself. But there is this big kind of discussion they have in the commentary that they said that there was fan theories about, and it was essentially like what in the film was real and what wasn't,
Mm.
because a lot of the film is this over exaggerated kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like seeing love through Tom's eyes. There's a musical number, for example.
Hmm.
There's a lot of like little vignettes that kind of break from your normal film, you know. Uh so yeah, like it's really interesting when they get into the debate about what was actually real and what isn't, especially once you get to the end of the film and some very climactic moments in the film.
Yeah.
And now looking back in hindsight, you're like, huh, was that real or not? Or
Mm.
was that Tom like mentally trying to move on from this point in life, trying to
Hmm.
grow, things like that. It's really cool. It's a really cool conversation. And those four guys on the commentary, they couldn't decide. They each had their own opinions on it. And I think
I
that's kind of part of the brilliance of the movie.
love that.
Um, And then the last thing I want to mention is the actual directing itself. Like
Hmm.
like I said, there's little vignettes. The use of music is absolutely brilliant. I love like the little graphics. Tom plays an architect, and I love there's a scene where that comes into play where they fade out a scene as like a chalk
Hmm.
drawing, and I'm like, oh, just so much of it. And the way they use split screens, the way you see certain scenes happen while Tom and Summer are in a relationship, and then you see those exact same scenes play out later after they've broken up, and you
Hmm.
kind of get like this different vibe from it. I think it was just, as far as filmmaking goes, it's a brilliant move, or
Yeah.
brilliant moves. And it was, I don't remember the director, but he went on to do the
Mark Webb.
Mark Webb. Oh, psst. He went to do the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which again, I mean, you see the influence in Peter and Gwen in those movies.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. God, I really wish, like, I really wish Mark Webb's Spider-Man movies weren't so like weren't just so like studio centric, and just like at the
Right.
whims of the studio, because I feel like yeah, there was something there. But yeah, Mark Webb directing, Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone in those two. Yeah, that's what makes those movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So also, that's the first time I see Clark Gregg, pre MCU Clark Gregg.
that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. Final fun fact about 500 Days of Summer. That was the first movie where, as soon as I finished it, I put it back on and started it again.
Really?
Hmm. Hmm.
Wow.
To
That's
date,
cool.
I think that's the only movie I've done that with.
That's something.
There have been God, earlier this year when I watched Heat for the first time,
Hmm.
I was so tempted. I was so tempted. I was like, no, I have to get up and do things. I need to do things today, but
Yeah.
I so much want to sit down for another 3 hours and watch this movie.
Yeah.
Maybe in the next 100 episodes, Heat will be in somewhere in my top 10.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's no Michael Mann on my list.
Me too.
But I do need to get back. I started my Michael Mann watch, and I only watched
Hmm.
one movie.
Hmm.
So I got to get back on that.
Oh, that's what we're gonna call those segments. Man watch.
Man watch.
Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting.
Speaking of watching men, no, my number three is not Watchmen. Um, but there's a
Oh,
lot of men in this movie. You could mistake them to be man's movies, but they're not. They're everyone's movies. Cinema of the people. It's the goddamn Lord of the Rings.
oh, funny enough, that's my number two. All
Hey,
right, we're gonna knock it out. Two birds
we're
with one
gonna knock
stone.
two of them out right there.
Yeah,
Oh man, that means I have to talk for the last two. So, oh, crap.
yeah.
I really put my foot into it this time
You really kicked the orc's helmet this time.
and broke my toes.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, what what can be said in this limited amount of time that we
Exactly.
have? It
Mm-hmm.
took them twice the amount of time that the movie's runtime are just to talk about the whole process of and making of and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. And
Mm-hmm.
even then, I think it only skims the surface of just how truly incredible these movies are. There is a reason why we've never seen more movies like this. This
Yeah.
is truly, these three movies truly are lightning in a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, just yeah, to a point where I feel like so much of our modern cinema is maybe not on an intuitive level, but I think on some level they're trying to replicate the same type of feeling and success
Mm-hmm.
of these movies.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm sorry, there's a reason why there's no Avengers movies on my top 10. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's because I'd trade every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
What up to we're up to like what 25, 26 now of these MCU movies. I'd
Yeah.
trade them all just to go back in time and watch all three Lord of the Rings in theaters
For
again
the first time, right?
for
Like,
the
dude,
first
that
time.
was amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now the only the I knew so I tried to read The Hobbit when I was in elementary school
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't get into it. Too many singing dwarves, which was odd because I really love Snow White and that is
and
nothing but singing dwarves.
and the singing dwarves were the best part of the Hobbit movies. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly they were. Um so yeah, but my first brush with Lord of the Rings was the animated
that's right.
Lord of the Rings. We rented it from Blockbuster, bringing it back. And yeah, yeah. So, talk about such a shift in the type of animation and the type of animated movies to watch because it pretty much was one day I was watching Snow White and the next day we rented the Lord of the Rings animated rotoscoped by Ralph Bakshi and I was horrified, but I didn't want to turn it off because I was so engrossed in the story.
Mm-hmm.
So when I found out they were taking that movie, that horrifying animated movie, and making it live action, mind blown. And then watching it in theaters, we watched all three of these movies in theaters together.
Yeah, we did.
We did. We
Man,
stayed through the whole thing. We sat through the whole credits, all of it
loved
for
it.
all three of those movies. Such an incredible journey.
And I feel like it's one we take for granted, you know, because it's
Yes.
been so long at this point. It's been 20 years, and it's just like, oh yeah, Lord of the Rings, blah blah blah.
Mhm.
But man, when you go back, like not even you don't even have to watch it again. You just hear the score from Howard Shore pops up on your Spotify, and you're like,
Mm.
you're back there. You're like, yeah, man, this was
Mhm.
life
Mhm.
changing and world changing because that was really the kickoff for a lot of I really think a lot of nerd culture, you know, because when Lord of the Rings hit theaters, nerds were still nerds, man. Geeks
Mhm.
were still geeks. Like it wasn't cool to be into this stuff at that time. You know, nowadays we still have kids, you know, uh um who, geez, they're already in their 20s. They're 20 years old. And they've grown up in a world where, like, hey, Marvel's cool. Reading comics is cool.
Mhm.
It wasn't like that when we were born. It wasn't like that when we were really, really little. We were
Yeah.
really into that stuff, but like still,
Mm-hmm.
um, you get picked on for that stuff. But
Yeah.
after Lord of the Rings, everyone started changing their minds. Everyone wanted more of that on TV. I don't think Lost would have ever got made if it wasn't for Lord of the Rings.
Probably
It's
not.
like everyone's like the global consciousness shifted, and they're like, you know what? We want a little magic in our life, and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that started popping up on TV more.
Mm-hmm.
Because before it was like the X Files, it was creepy and weird and a little sci-fi, but not too far until you get
Mm-hmm.
into the later seasons where it's just nuts, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But and of course you had Star Trek and stuff, but like Lord of the Rings started changing everything, and
Mm-hmm.
it took what, at least a decade until we got Game of Thrones. Certainly wouldn't have got Game of Thrones if it wasn't for Lord of the Rings.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And it
Oh, yeah, a bunch of these, like huge, properties that we have now, we pretty much have Lord of the Rings to thank for that.
mhm. Yeah. I don't think the Nolan Batman movies would have been as successful. Like
Mm-hmm.
Lord of the Rings touched and changed so much. Like it's hard to really be like, nah, I don't think it did. And it's like it's clear it's there. Also, because there are such huge financial successes, both financially and critically,
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what kind of turned all the studios on. They're like, hey, let's do more of this.
It's so interesting because, uh you talk about, finding like decades don't really d- find the thing that defines them until at least like the middle of the decade, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like it takes about 5 years to really get like what is going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think film is a good progenitor of sort of what perfectly like you said, like the global consciousness, like what's on our minds, what are
Mm-hmm.
our anxieties, what are our fears, our dreams. 1999 is a formative year of cinema. So many fantastic movies came out that year, changing the game, all that stuff. Lord of the Rings is an interesting is a real interesting case study because you have three movies made all at once
Mm-hmm.
but released before, during, and after the 9/11 attacks,
Mm-hmm.
which is such a fascinating microcosm when you look at it, because just on like a film historian level, I think like that's such an incredible thing. Like you literally had a movie come out the December of the year that 9/11 happened called The Two Towers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's such an odd thing to think about,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of makes my stomach turn a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's no fault of the movie. It's
Yeah.
nobody could have predicted that was going to happen.
Yeah.
But you have, Fellowship and Two Towers and Return of the King. Like you have these three movies that all sort of form what would be, yeah, the growing trends that would go into, even now. I feel like now we're kind of coming out of like the grounded realism,
Mm-hmm.
which is funny to say about Lord of the Rings, but it did bring this all of this fantasy and all of this beauty and wonder of another world, and it grounds it in a reality that is believable.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
And that's what I was gonna say too. Guys, we've talked about this before. I recommend going back to like 2 years ago. We have an episode called The Holy Trinity of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Sam and I talking about the three films we felt really kind of spawned this dark, gritty vibe that Hollywood's been in for the last, I don't know, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And spoiler alert, it's Batman Begins, Casino Royale, and Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. They all
Mm-hmm.
came out in the same year. And a big part of that is, I don't actually remember if we talked about this on the show, before, but a big part of
Hmm.
it is the post 9/11 storytelling.
Hmm.
Our heroes changed, you know. America wanted something different. There was a lot of pain and there was a lot of anger, and we needed heroes that represented that.
Hmm.
And like, so it's really interesting to look at Lord of the Rings, which started this whole geek kaboom, I don't know what you want to call it,
Hmm.
explosion of celebrating nerd culture. But at the same time, it really was if kind of like almost the end of an era. Like
Hmm.
this is the last story of our pure heroes of
Yeah.
good versus evil. Because
Yeah.
after that, we were everything after that was like these weird shades of gray. Everyone's
Hmm.
an anti-hero, or we're following the villain and we want to see them fall, or we want to
Hmm.
see them succeed. I don't know. You know, Sons of Anarchy, Breaking Bad, uh
Joker.
Joker, you know, so many. Yeah. Well, and Joker is much more of uh mm, you could get a lot into the current politics, you
For
know,
sure.
is more tied to Joker. But yeah, it's kind of the same thing, you know. Hell, I was telling Sam I started watching Succession and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to keep going cuz like it's a really good show and it's really kind of it's a compelling story, but I don't like any of these characters.
Mm.
So I
Hmm.
might just do like one episode a week,
Hmm.
something like that. But because I do want to know what happens. But yeah, so it's this weird point in time where Lord of the Rings was both like the ending and the beginning of this era. And now I'm thinking about it, maybe that's why the nerd culture exploded. It wasn't
Hmm.
just Lord of the Rings, but for the first time, it was escapism for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, I've always said like I've never treated media as something like as an escape.
Hmm.
Dungeons and Dragons, Star Trek, whatever. Like I want to have experiences that emotionally resonate with me, not just to get away from the world, you know?
Hmm.
But then the pandemic happens and we're all quarantined and then everyone's fighting over politics and over racial injustice and the world's just literally on fire. And these past couple of years, I'm like, I need something to escape, you know. So I get it, and I think that was a big part of that as well. You know,
Hmm.
it was Lord of the Rings, it was 9/11, all these things happening at once, and that really shaped the way film and storytelling went. It shaped that path for the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
It's interesting what's going to happen now. A lot of people were saying like film historians are really going to be looking at 2023 because of course Hollywood's taking the wrong lessons from Barbenheimer, but they're
Yeah.
like, but you have to really look at the trends. Like look at how successful Marvel has been, but where they're at now.
Hmm.
And not just Marvel, just all superhero movies, all genre movies. Indiana Jones did not make its money back.
Yeah.
Transformers did not make its money back. It's like it's not so much that the blockbusters, it's the franchises. But then you have Barbie and Oppenheimer come out the same weekend and it changes. Oh, Mission Impossible the week before didn't
Hmm.
do as good as they were hoping. So they're saying like film historians are really going to be looking at this moment and we don't know how it's shifting yet and where it's going to go.
Hmm.
But it's going to be interesting.
Yep.
So, needless to say, we both agree on Lord of the Rings, and we count it as one singular movie because it really is.
It really is more,
Yeah,
and I know people try and get away with that with like the Star Wars movies or like the
no,
first trilogy of Pirates of the Caribbean. It's
yeah.
like no, 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 no,
They're
no.
all written separately
Yeah.
and they're all filmed separately.
Yeah.
No, these were all filmed together, written together. This is one story.
Yeah. Yeah. And even the books themselves flow
Yeah.
in a way that is like you can't just you can't just
Oh,
read one
yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah.
I even think the Lord of the Rings one, I do prefer the extended cuts, but even
Hmm.
Lord of the Rings,
Oh, of course.
their stopping points are better than the stopping points of the novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think Tolkien knew it as well. Like this is one story. I just can't fit it into one book. Technically, it's six books, but
Hmm.
each book is two combined. They're even
Hmm.
called book one, book two, you
Yeah.
know, because he knew it was going to be weird to chunk these in certain ways.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, that's Sam's number three and my number two. So we're gonna kind of we've already been doing this for a while. So let's finish this up. Sam, what's your number two?
Talked a lot about animation. Uh, one entry previous, two entries previous. Sorry. Beauty of animation. All that stuff. Um, power of storytelling. Haven't really talked about superheroes except for just now where we were talking about the realism, Nolan and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna talk about the realism of emotion, the realism of what time does to the soul.
Mm.
I want to talk about what happens when two broken people meet each other at different points in their lives and how they're irrevocably changed. How you want to talk about favorite tropes? Star-crossed lovers, doomed romances, maybe not doomed to death, but doomed to fail at any point in time. And neither one of them realizes it until it's too late. Folks, we're talking about Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
Yeah, man. I was wondering. You said I mentioned one of yours last week. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep. I
That
was like,
was an
where's Sam
honorable
going with this?
mention. That was an honorable mention. I would.
It
There's at
was on my
least
top 10 at one point.
there's at least three of yours that I would gladly toss to the wind. I would gladly hold down into a
Oh,
wood chipper
man.
for this movie. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry. Um, but no, Batman Mask of the Phantasm. It's the best Batman movie.
Yeah, it
Go
is.
fight a rock. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is interesting because again, like different generations, and I'm seeing people that are like, yeah, it's good, but I think like this animated movie's better, and I'm like, unless it's Batman Under the Red Hood,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to disagree.
Yeah.
Or the Lego Batman movie, because the Lego
Yeah.
Batman movie is, for all intents and purposes, also a perfect animated Batman movie. Perfect
Mm-hmm.
Batman movie. Don't know why I said animated.
I got a lot of feelings about those DC animated films, man.
I do too. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we're not here to talk about those because
Yeah.
those are things we don't love.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about things we love here.
Mm-hmm.
We love movies. We love Batman. We love Batman movies. And we love when Batman movies are this good. And I need everybody working, well, hopefully not now working because we're currently in the middle of an actor and writer strike.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully everybody in the future who's, listening to this episode now, who's going to be working on the next Robert Pattinson, Matt Reeves Batman movie, I need y'all to look at Mask of the Phantasm, and I need y'all to just get on that level.
And you know what? Matt Reeves is. That's what's
Mm-hmm.
exciting.
Yeah, yeah. That I am pumped. I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's a perfect movie. It is essentially a romance noir. It's hardly a superhero movie at all. If anything, it takes more from like Casablanca than it does
Oh, for
like
sure.
any other like superhero movie, whatever. Like, no, that's kind of what's so unique about this. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what the best superhero movies do, is that they don't take from their comic book roots, they take from the things that inspired the origins of those
Yes.
comics.
Yes.
Like Batman is such a mix of pulp and noir. Uh and for these writers, these actors to come together to tell a story that's like, hey, you know what's something that we haven't explored in this medium? We haven't explored one, the origins of Batman, but also what romance looks like with this man.
Mm-hmm.
and what romance looks like at different points in his life. Because it starts off, you want to talk about 500 Days of Summer, it's all young love, young romance. Here we
Mm-hmm.
have Bruce Wayne, before he's even put on the costume, thinking about not putting on a costume, thinking
Mm-hmm.
about throwing it all away for somebody he met maybe a couple of weeks ago. It's it's a fiery romance. There's passion, and then it's gone. And there's no explanation as to why. And it sort of makes it seem like maybe this is the impetus of it, like the fact that he is who he is, the things that have happened in his life, he can never be happy, and he dives headfirst into it. He takes the plunge into darkness, and he
Mm-hmm.
rises up as a weird creature of the night. And then we cut to, I don't know, x amount of years later, 10 years later maybe, and that same person comes back, and that same fire is still there in both of them, not just in one. This isn't an
Mm-hmm.
unrequited love. This is very requited. It is
Mm-hmm.
requited to hell, and it's
Yeah.
so beautiful. Oh, I'm gonna, if I keep going, I'm gonna keep going for another like 30 minutes, and we don't have that
Mm-hmm.
time. But it's it is a fantastic, wonderful little just little story. I don't care. I don't even care if it fits within the canon of the comics or the animated series or what. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a perfect standalone story as it is. And
Yeah.
it's one of the best, it's one of the best romances of all time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I wouldn't call them star-crossed lovers because I feel like they were very stars aligned. Like, and that's kind of the thing
Mhm,
between Bruce and Andrea. They were perfect for each other. Like they were meant for each other. And um as circumstances would have it, fate even in a way makes them the same, almost as
mhm,
if it's trying to pull them back together.
mhm,
And that's where it comes down to basically, like in the past, Bruce is dealing with the fact of like, do I become this? Do I become Batman? He's
mhm,
struggling with this, trying to have a life and actually sacrificing it for Batman. And then when you get to the modern day, it becomes where he's finally Batman, and Bruce Wayne is almost like an afterthought. Now Batman is at this place where he has this code, you know,
mhm,
and he has to choose between that code and essentially his soulmate, possibly,
mhm,
you
mhm.
know, and that's what's, Romeo and Juliet is overrated. Star-crossed lovers, I'm like, eh, but like no, it's like when the stars actually align and try to put you back together, but it contradicts your own morals,
Mhm,
values, and your code. That's where the drama is, and that's what Batman finds himself in this film. And
mhm.
yeah, man,
Yeah.
it's sad, it's tragic. Batman's a tragedy.
Mhm,
So, and it has some of the best music by Shirley Walker, who also did the animated series,
mhm,
and produced by Hans Zimmer himself.
mhm.
Speaking of Hans Zimmer, and the end credit song was sung by Tia Carrera, who played the girlfriend in Wayne's World, which we also just
Hey,
mentioned.
we also
So,
just mentioned.
uh, speaking about these mythological figures,
Oh no.
my number one film
Uh-huh.
of all time
Uh-huh.
has to be the mythological of them all, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I know everyone's gonna go with Raiders. I do think Raiders of the Lost Ark is a stronger film, but this movie has the story of Indy and his dad,
Mm,
and that's what hits home for me. I
yeah.
always remember I'm sitting there watching it with my brother and watching it with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the heart of it comes from. Yeah.
I'll say this for everybody who's like, Raiders is better. Raiders is a better action movie.
Exactly.
And in that respect, in that respect, yeah. And just looking at like Spielberg's craft, and all that stuff, I think it is a perfect movie in that respect.
Hmm.
But Raiders of the Lost Ark is the best of the trilogy,
Oh yeah,
and
it's
yeah,
the best of the franchise.
yeah, best of the franchise.
Talking about
I am more willing to put on Last Crusade than any
yeah,
of the others.
talk about your character arcs,
Mm-hmm.
the soul of Indy. Like it's all just laid to bear in this,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And the fact that you get Sean Connery of all people to play the dad,
Mm-hmm.
and he does a fantastic job. You
Mm-hmm.
know, he's only a few years older than Harrison Ford when they
Yeah.
filmed it, but he plays it perfectly, and the relationship is just they're kind of the broken father and son relationship is played so well on screen
Mm-hmm.
for the humor, the laughs, but also the love, and oh man, that's a perfect movie for me,
Mm-hmm.
5 stars easily.
Easily.
um yeah, India at his best. Also, I don't know, I just part of the father son thing was the relationship with like faith and religion, because that's a big thing in this film as well. Indy always has some kind of quote unquote supernatural element, something bigger than our earthly bounds.
Mm-hmm.
And people tend to forget that when it comes to indie movies. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is too cheesy or whatever. It's like, well, indies always cross that line.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not cheesy. And like, I don't think this one is. I don't think any of the original are cheesy in any way.
Mm-mm.
Um, but the second one definitely dips its toes into the supernatural. This one really dips its toes into the more holy arena,
Mm-hmm.
and Indy's a man of science, a man of facts, and he literally has to face his beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
He has to take the leap of faith, and it's a phenomenal story, and I love it. I don't even. It's like the more I love something, I can't talk about it. I don't know what else to say. The music, John Williams is at his best.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the focus was on Indy and his dad, which is why it's well, I don't want to say too much because people might have seen it, but like the quote unquote love interest in this one, I think was brilliantly done because it
Mm-hmm.
didn't really take away from the main plot or relationships in any way.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it set up a lot of stuff in a brilliant way, And you also got the return of the friends. You get Sala and you got Brody back.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, action scenes phenomenal. You know, Indy, it's Indy on a horse versus a tank. Like, come on, and he's punching Nazis again, so it's brilliant.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. That's easily my favorite film of all time.
Solid choice. Solid
All
choice.
right, Sam. We've talked about a lot of films.
We have.
Yeah, so no pressure, but because it's all led up to this, the
Uh-huh.
number one film
Mm-hmm.
on Sam's list.
Mm-hmm.
If it's less than perfect, everyone's gonna go home and cry.
Guys, it's Hardcore Henry.
You joke.
What can I say? I'm no, legitimately, I'm actually surprised that that one's not on your top 10. Considering like we talked about that a while ago, and you're
Dude,
like,
I know.
I think this is one of my top 10 of all time.
It's one of those things where like I appreciate the behind the scenes nature more. The film
Mm.
itself it's good,
Mm-hmm.
but it's essentially a video game. Guys, if you haven't heard of it, Hardcore Henry, go check
Mm-hmm.
it out. This bunch of Russian dudes made it. It's all first person. Uh Phenomenal, crazy, crazy action movie. You'll never see the likes of this again because it's all in first person.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I think I loved it and I love the soundtrack. But I think the real reason I love that movie is because of like the technical side of it. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
like wow, I can't believe they actually did this and how much they actually did practically in camera. There's a lot
Yeah.
of CGI, but there's a lot of stuff they did because they could because it was first person.
Mm-hmm.
So top 20 Probably it's a safe bet to be in the top 20.
Hmm. You want to know what other movie that I can't believe they did how much in camera they did for this movie, how
Uh-oh.
practical it was. You know, we we talked about myths and legends. You know, I think this movie has some of the greatest myths and legends of our modern era. You know, the greatest storytellers of our time, really, you know, are all packed in this one movie. You know, that maybe not be some people's cup of tea, you know, or it might not be their, you know, their ride across America. It might not be that. But if you don't believe in dreams and following your dreams, if you don't believe in finding your people who can all come together and make those dreams a reality, then I don't think you appreciate the Muppets. And I think that you hate me personally. And I
Hmm.
think that you think that me saying that the Muppet movie is the greatest movie of all time is somehow, I don't know, weird. I'm a lesser human being. I shouldn't be at film school. Why are you at film school, Sam? Get out of here. What about Citizen Kane or Fight Club? All good movies, all good movies. But you know what? They pale in comparison. I think Orson Welles would agree with me. You know why? Orson Welles would agree with me that Citizen Kane pales in comparison to the Muppet movie because he's in the goddamn Muppet movie. He's the I okay. I won't say anymore if you haven't seen it, but
Uh-huh.
he's in the Muppet movie and it's an incredible scene and it's an incredible movie. And
Hmm.
you talked about it.
I was wondering. I was like, by the time I got to mine, I'm like, I'm really surprised Sam hasn't mentioned the Muppet movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of just, forgot about it. And then I'm like, oh God,
Mm-hmm.
okay, here we
I
go.
I was trying to figure out if I should be like, oh yeah, I have more to say, but I'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, give up the ghost or, as it were.
Hmm.
Um, folks, yeah, it's a very deeply personal movie to me. Um, not so much anymore, but there was a point where in my life where there were, definitely some, like not great times mental health wise, just, really down on the outs. The only thing that really helped me, one of the only things that really helped me to just like find some calm at the end of the day, I'm just putting on the Muppet movie and, spending the next, I don't even know how long it is. It's maybe like 90 minutes, like
Hmm.
just spending the next 90 minutes with some of the funniest and brightest people the world has ever given us.
Hmm.
Um, and I include, all of the puppeteers in it as well as the Muppets. Um, because they really are. I think it takes an extraordinary amount of humility to dedicate your life to be uh the person who holds up the Muppet and
Hmm.
does the voice, but people don't look at you. You're not the one who's getting the praises. It's Kermit the Frog or Fozzie
Hmm.
or Miss Piggy, or Gonzo. Um, but that's a type of like ego death that I think is uh given to people who are made of sterner stuff and who are made of kindness.
Hmm.
And this movie just irradiates kindness. It's also incredibly funny. Uh, yeah, a fantastic comedy in its own right. Um, yeah, I think you're, I think you could, find a worse duo, than Kermit and Fozzie, but I don't think you'll find any better. I
Hmm.
really don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like yeah, there's some, yeah, I know, nostalgia might play a little bit into this, and I watched this movie so much as a kid, and all of this, and yeah, but there's just something about it that every time I think about it, every time I go back to it, it's like everything in this movie works for me.
Yeah.
Everything about this is still magical, even though I know how they made all of this stuff, even though I know all the fun facts,
Mm-hmm.
and and yeah, Muppet Christmas Carol is a fantastic Muppet movie. There's so many great Muppet movies. This one's my favorite. And
Mm-hmm.
you talk about movies that you think were made for you. I think in a way this movie was made for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and like they represent man, it's kind of like what you're saying, like there's this purity with them, this kindness, this love, but also like a wisdom. There's a wisdom that comes with that. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just, sure, it's silly, but there's always a message. And like I said, there's love that comes through that, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
especially right now, that's something we need
Mm-hmm.
more of. But like that's been them the whole time since their
Mm-hmm.
creation. It's just that this film in particular represents that the most,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
That's why some of the Muppet movies are better than others, but that's why this one is the best, you
Mm-hmm.
know, for all the dreamers, the lovers, and me.
Mm-hmm. It's the
Man,
other way around, but that's okay.
well, I didn't want to plagiarize and get sued. Um,
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah,
That
sorry,
makes sense.
Kermie. Kermie's still a businessman. Let's remember that.
That's true. That's true.
Man, well, that's a hell of a list, man. Uh, and it's kind of interesting now because I was thinking about all my honorable mentions. I'm like, wow, maybe eventually we're gonna have to do a 11 through 20 or rearrange some. Like, I don't know. I don't
Oh
know.
man.
I'm thinking about it now. So
Mm-hmm.
another one I didn't mention, Coherence. Go check it out. We have a history with the film Coherence, guys.
I'm out.
Just go watch it. Amazon Prime. Um, guys, thank you for joining us in this little self-indulging two-part episode where we just talk about the films we love the most.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it was
It's been
fun.
a hoot. It's been a
Yeah,
blast.
yeah, but we've already gone super long. So hit us up. Let us know what your favorite films are. Hashtag Lost Legacies. We'll see it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
on Twitter at _Matt Jimenez and on Instagram at Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch.
And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Real. That's REEL Texas Weirdo.
Until next time, get lost.
Get lost.